Happy Friday, guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Dubs. I'm your host, Bill T. Well, if you've been following my adventure on Instagram this week, you'll know that I went to Colorado Springs, flew out there to pick up this Guia TC. It's a Brazilian Karma Guia, and decided I was going to pick it up with the no prep road trip and bring that dude back to Vegas. So it was an eventful couple days. Drove out there. I made it to from Colorado Springs. I made it about 22 miles out of there, and she gave up the ghost, put it on a flatbed, towed it over to Sam Coots over at New Vintage, and spent a day with him today going through the whole thing. Got the carbs working, new plugs, points, adjusted the valves, new axle boots, new wheel seals, all the stuff to get it prepped, bled the brakes, all this stuff to get it ready to go. And unfortunately, leaving out of there, there's a couple killer hills, and even keeping it at 40 miles an hour, it just devastated. The motor gave up the ghost and lost a rod at the top of Evergreen. So that's where I'm at right now, at a hotel in Evergreen, Colorado. But hey, we're moving forward and we got a positive attitude. So it is what it is. There was an old Brazilian motor, and if it had made it, it'd have been a miracle. But listen, we had good intentions, and rent a car, tow bar that bad dog back. And that's the plan for now. So life goes on. Good things are happening. And I could have been at work. It could have been worse, right? So here I am, getting ready to deliver another podcast to you guys. And this week's podcast was a podcast I've been looking to get for a while. If you've been watching the drag racing scene for any amount of time, you're familiar with the Bergs, or whether it was the Volks Group or any of the races before that, you'll know the name John Shuerger. John Schuerger is one of the most consistent drag racers that's out on the scene, and he likes to run sportsman class. He's got a really fast car, wheels up, 2332 motor. I've met him at a few tracks, and heck of a guy, super consistent, really good at what he does. And finally got to sit him down and talk to him about his blue car, which is a really interesting story as to how long he's owned that car and how long he's been campaigning that car. So he's got several championship awards, 5-time champion in some of the PRA stuff, and the list goes on. So I'm excited to bring this podcast to you. But before we get into the podcast, let's make sure that we support our sponsors, support Ross Wolf, high quality aftermarket parts, manufactured by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. So go check them out at rosswolf.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the VW Trends magazine, a magazine for the people and by the people. Not the same old stuff, new stuff all the time, lots of how-tos, and water pumper cars as well. So lots of cool stuff to check out. VW Trends, go subscribe today at vwtrends.com. Now, I wanted to give a special thanks to my boy Sam Coots at New Vintage. He went above and beyond. Conrad over there, Bill, all the guys over there really just pitched in. Were super solid, helped out, man. Just made this whole experience super cool, man. And we wrapped up the day, kind of wadded up a whole day on it, and drove out of there with a lot more power in that Type 34 or that Type whatever, the Guia TC. And she was running pretty good. I ended up getting some gas burners on the way. But hope is not all lost. So we'll slap a motor in that dude and get her back on the road. She's a cool looking rig, and we'll end up doing a nice rag top in that thing and really churching it up. So I'm looking forward to that. But if you're in the Denver area and you're looking for anybody to do work on your Volkswagen, from tune-ups to restorations to anything in between, Sam can help you. So go check out New Vintage in Aurora, Colorado. Look them up, New Vintage. They are the shop to go to if you're in the greater Denver area. So I can't thank those guys enough, and they're solid VW people to the core, man. So, and that's what makes this hobby so great, are those people. And I had a chance to sit down with Sam, so that podcast will probably come out next week. And I'm excited. I mean, listen, I'm excited for the whole thing. Luckily, I've got my partner. My wife is just solid as a rock. She's got good spirits. It is what it is. And we just roll with the punches. So I'm a little down tonight because I was really hoping to get some mileage out of that thing. But, when I saw these grades were going up, it was kind of a, mission impossible. So what can you do? But other than that, life goes on. And I'm excited for this week's podcast. So John Shuerger, if you know him, you love him. You've seen him. He's one of the nicest guys you can meet at the track. Super helpful. Always willing to give some advice, and just a rock solid dude from way back. Mr. Consistent. And this week's podcast drag racer John Shuerger, Mr. Consistent. Without any further ado, let's get into it this week on Let's Talk Dubs.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen. It's got everything that people who like the Bergs like. So if you happen to see a good-looking Volkswagen, don't panic.
Okay, everybody. So today I'm up here at the Volks Group, Medford, Oregon, for their drag racing event that they have here. As always, when I come up here, I pin down some of these guys that we've got to get their history down. And today we're sitting with John Schuerger, and he is, you're familiar with his car because you've seen it at just about every drag racing event that there is. This guy's all over like a fungus. He's everywhere. He is a PRA Super Gas 5-time champ, a Triple Crown Pro Eliminator 3-time champ, and a BRS Super Combo champion. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, now we've been talking at the last couple times I see you at the races, and I finally got you to sit down. And the way that we always start the podcast is the same. What's your VW story, and how did you get into Volkswagens?
Well, if I go back, my father, when I was a kid, probably around 6 years old, we were living in Germany. My father was stationed there, and he had bought a 66 Karmann Ghia. And then we moved to the States a few years later, brought it with him. And then right when I was around 10 years old, he was driving it, and something happened. It broke down. And so he traded it in for a 70 Beetle at Ogner Motors in Culver City.
Really?
Back in 1970. And I was too young to know
Sure.
any of this. And he wasn't mechanically inclined, so he had no idea what happened. And so he had that 70 Beetle. A few years later, I turned 16. And so I ended up with that 70 Beetle as my first car.
Wow.
And so I drove that for a little bit and decided, I'll put a little extra stuff in the motor and enhanced it a little bit.
And so this is early 70s when you're doing this?
Yeah, this is 1976, 77.
And so the VW thing is still pretty hot. It's fairly new. Auto houses around, all that stuff's going on.
Johnny Speed and Chrome, small car specialties. Yep.
And at this time, you're in Southern California at this time, so you're kind of in the hotbed of all things cool in Volkswagen.
But ironically, I really wasn't close to any of that. It was just really me and a car and an interest in a car and a Volkswagen at that time.
So you didn't have like magazines or anything like that really got you fired up about the scene?
No.
Interesting.
No. And
you just liked the car that much.
Yeah. And then, I've been hearing about, small car and Gene Berg Enterprises and stuff. Next thing I'm over at Gene Berg's, buying some 48 IDAs and, crankshaft over time.
So you're there in the 70s buying stuff from Gene Berg?
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
So, it's just fun stuff going on over here.
Yeah.
So you first meet the Berg family because you've got a pretty close relationship with the Bergs.
Yes.
You first meet Gene in the 70s.
Yep.
And what's your impression when you meet him? Because Gene was kind of a one-way.
Oh, I was, very impressed, and I had learned just even in the early years about quality product.
Right. What's your first experience where you bought something that was?
I bought I forget what kind of crank it was, Claus Buggy or something like that, and I broke it pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
And so then I was over at the Berg shop, and I thought, okay, give me a 78 welded crank. And so I bought a 78 welded crank and had stock rods and put it together, and things held together.
Yeah.
And so
you learned early on about quality from meeting Gene and having experiences in the past.
Yes.
So your relationship originally with the Bergs was just kind of a customer relationship, or was Gene the kind of guy that once you were willing to pay the money for his parts that he was proud of because he put a lot of time, effort, and energy into designing and engineering those parts, was it kind of a thing where like he was offering help, or was it?
Well, yeah, certainly the knowledge that he has, and was willing to share was very, very helpful, And then, I got to know Clyde, and at some point in time, I was getting to a point where after work, I'd go over to the shop, and just try to, hang out a little bit, pick up some more tidbits, learn. And we got to the point, Clyde and I and Harold Carter and Mike Demkowski, we would go and golf Thursday nights.
Oh, really?
And we go out every Thursday night, go down to David L. Baker down Miles Square Park in Orange County, and we'd be golfing every Thursday night.
Yeah.
And there was some great times there,
And so you start doing some high post stuff to your car. Now, you've really been into the kind of more of the bracket racing and sportsman type racing for the past so many years. But when did you decide, when was your first time on a track?
Well, if we take a step back,
Sure.
I had the 70 Beetle. I built a small motor with some 42 DCNFs, and at around my senior year of high school, I had an interest in vans as well.
Yeah.
And I was working 2 jobs, and I saved up some money, and I bought a 74 Chevy van for a couple of grand.
Yeah.
And brought it home, and I was paying for it, and I was paying for the insurance for both cars. But my dad says, hey, you're in high school, you can't have 2 cars, you need to have one, one's got to go. So sadly, I pulled the motor out of the 70 Bug, I put the stalker back in it, and I sold it to somebody up in West Covina.
Wow. So you sold
Back in 79 or something.
So you picked the Chevy because it was kind of the cooler thing for you at the time.
Yeah.
You're in high school, all your buddies can
All
hang out in the van.
customized. Oh, yeah.
We're all going to get into this. Did you have
Yeah.
the mushroom window or the heart-shaped window in the back?
It was a teardrop. It was like a
the kidney bean.
Yeah, and it had the chrome side pipes, the white flares, the
Shorty,
sunroof,
a shorty van.
shorty van, half-ton shorty van.
And ironically, those things are worth a lot of money now.
I still have it.
You still have that van?
I still have that van. It's sitting up on jack stands, covered. I still have that van. I've always been saying for years I want to restore it, and just time and money. You
Yeah.
know, and but yeah, I used to cruise Whittier Boulevard in it,
Really?
everything, and so a few years went by, and my brother
Yeah.
had an interest in buying a Volkswagen, so he bought the car I actually raced today.
Oh, you bought your
It was a
1966.
street. It was a Bone Street car.
Yeah.
Tan, beige, color. And so he bought that, and I had my motor sitting in the garage for years.
So
and
you've got a motor. What's the displacement motor? It's like a
78 by 88.
So it's 1900 cc motor, and it's all
42 DCNFs.
42 DCNFs. I like
Yeah.
your recipe.
Yeah.
I like where you're
And
going with
so
this.
he's like, okay. So I put it in his car. And so
It's
he
a
drove
nice
it.
brother.
Yeah.
What a nice brother.
Well, get this. So he's driving it, and I don't know how many months or so later, he was coming back from a party one night and coming down the street, and I guess he over-revved it or something and parked it down the street and walked home.
Oh, wow.
And he says, hey, something happened to the motor. You got to come check it out. So I go and I walk over there and pull up the deck lid, and sure enough, half the rod's sitting over by the carburetor.
Oh,
And,
wow.
the case is windowed, so he pitched a rod out of it. And so I'm like, okay. So I rebuilt the motor, put it all back together for him, and he
you were
drove it for a while.
So the philosophy of Gene telling you, because in his book he says no one cares more about your engine than you, so
Correct.
you should build your engine.
Correct.
And kind of you took that philosophy to heart, and then building one VW motor for you to build another one is no big deal?
No, not at all.
Really?
Not at all. And I had a neighbor across the street, an older gentleman, kind of like a second father to me, who I really hung out with a lot at a young age and learned how to do a lot of repairs on a lot of other things.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He taught me a lot and taught me how to work on engines as well.
I mean, it's pretty impressive.
So-
Your brother blows up the motor, and then you just take it. And
Yeah,
because back
take it
in
and put it together.
in that era, people were so foreign with Volkswagens. It's like they'd blow it up, and then it would just get sold because nobody knew how to work on it. It's a foreign
Yeah.
car, all this
Yeah.
stuff. So
Yeah.
the experience of building your motor was not a challenge. So now,
No.
when your brother throws a rod, does he want anything to do with the car anymore, or he's kind of over it?
He drove it for a while. He drove it for another year or two. And then he says, hey, you know what? Hey, I want to buy another car. I've kind of lost interest. He says, you want the car? I said, sure, I'll buy it off you. So
What do you buy? What do you buy the car for him for?
I don't even remember, to be honest.
Yeah, a few $100
It
or
wasn't
$1,000.
much. I can tell you that. It wasn't much. And so I bought the car, and one thing led to another. I ended up.
So now that you get the car back
with IDAs,
because you're living the van life, right?
Yeah.
And then after you start parting your hair to the side instead of in the middle, and you're not driving the van anymore, you buy the Bug back. Does that spark you like, I might go check out some bug ins and some this, or does it sit for a while, or what's the? I mean, were you always a little bit in the scene?
I just drove it on the street, and again, I really wasn't in the scene, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even go to OCIR.
Oh, really?
No. I've never even raced at OCIR, ironically.
And you were,
sadly,
you were old enough and around during the time.
Oh, absolutely.
But you just were like, it wasn't your thing.
Working 2 jobs, college, and just driving that car, and that's all I was doing.
So version 1.0 of that car, it's got the motor in it, the 1900, and then you've got, what do you got on it for wheels?
Porsche alloys were on it.
Oh, really? So
he
you
had
already
Porsche alloys on it.
You did had a selected drop, all that stuff.
Yep.
Wow. So that car really, I mean, for as long as you've had it, you've really gone through the evolution of the hobby with just that car.
Yeah.
So now the front suspension, I'm assuming it's not a selected drop anymore on there, or you still run the selected drop?
It's just the Avis adjusters.
So it's got the Avis adjusters.
Yep.
And then drop spindles, or
it got a few leaf springs out of it.
So it's still a little bit old school on that.
It's all stock from there.
Or drum brakes?
No drum brakes, no drop spindles.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
so it's all stock.
When do you start kind of coming out and start, like, what triggers you to start getting into the sportsman racing and some stuff like that? Or?
It was really, spending a lot of time with Clyde.
So you're still, through
the 80s.
Even though you're not super into VWs, you're still hanging out with Clyde.
Yep,
he's your
absolutely.
buddy, and you guys are kind of doing whatever.
Yep.
And he's like, hey, why don't you get that old ratty Bug out and let's do something with it?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and one thing led to another with cylinder heads and stuff, and then the IDAs went on it, and I took it out. I really, honestly, I want to say the first time out was Palmdale.
Palmdale?
Palmdale.
When's the last time they raced in Palmdale?
That had been a long time.
Was that like a PR? Was that was a PRA event?
No, it was Race for Gold, jeans stuff. Race for Gold.
Yeah, back in the late 80s. So that's late 80s.
Bracket stuff. Yeah, late 80s, mid-late 80s.
Huh.
Yeah, so we were up there. We actually, a lot of times, Clyde and I and Mike Demkowski, we go up there and rent the track and test. And but really, the first race that's the most memorable, I think, was just learning how to tune the car.
Uh-huh.
They were teaching me how to tune the car, jet it for the different conditions. And then I remember I got up against Lloyd Mosier. Mm-hmm. And I won that race.
Really?
And I thought I had won a championship at that point. I was just like that. It just sunk with me.
You remember what you ran at the time?
I want to say high 12s.
Wow.
With I think.
With a 1900cc motor?
Yeah.
High compression?
Yeah.
Like a motor built for racing?
Yeah.
Because that's the interesting thing. Because like me not knowing Gene and just reading his books, it's like in his books, it's all about longevity, living, and all that stuff. But then maybe his philosophy is a little different when you're talking about drag racing. It's kind of
it's still longevity and stuff, and keeping it together.
Right. I mean, the parts he builds are are obviously built for quality, but when you're out there racing with those guys, it's okay. How do we get this motor punch this thing out as much as it'll do?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I mean, 12 seconds with a 1900cc motor, that's moving. And that's a close ratio trans, or?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that one is a Type 1 box.
So this is all quarter mile. So you beat Lloyd Mosier and you're on top of the world. You're just like, where's my crown?
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm the guy. Crown me now.
Exactly.
And so is that what kind of inspires you? Like, I really want to kind of be.
Well, I mean, that whole time period right there, at that track and spending that time, that kind of really got me hooked into the racing aspects of it. Before then it was just kind of driving around the street and just kind of feeling how nice it is when you lay into the throttle and lays you back,
Yeah.
So
Palmdale's the kind of the thing, and then after that, I mean, obviously and you're probably have been through a bunch of it, right? PRA, BRS. I mean, race for the gold,
yeah.
like all those racing series. And from your perspective, especially you being a sportsman guy, wanting to race for the love of racing, right? And doing your own personal best, because we were talking last night about a little bit of the drama when you get in the different classes and stuff, and you want to go out there and consistently it's like a personal challenge for you to be consistent with your car, dial in your number and hit that number and repeat it,
Yeah.
you know. They've tried so many things in the past to get all these different racing series going and they tried to make them more for kind of like the average guy to be able to bring your daily driver, get
Right.
involved, do some racing. What do you think, in all the years that you've been seeing racing, what to you, was there anything out there that like, oh, that seems like a cool class that I'd like to be in, or I'd like to follow that? Because they had performance heads, they had performance, I think they had a special head racing class at one time, and then they had the Cadrone class, and then the
Right.
Super 1600 class, and
Yeah.
all these things. What do you think? Because that's really the challenge of drag racing, right? They try so much to get everybody involved so that there's a big turnout, lots of cars, and more fun. What do you think, in your history of seeing all this stuff, has been the most, the best class or the most enjoyable?
I think, really the PRA during the heydays,
Yeah.
And what really struck my interest was the 1190 index, because my car was pretty much like right there at that point in time.
Right.
And so what made that class really fun was all of the participants. What happened over the first few years, it was okay. But then you had a lot of the Ren-Kafer Cup class, and a lot of those guys jumped and started getting into the, like the Super Combo class. Mike Lawless, Troy Palmer, Scott Bach, and, names and stuff. And so in the early years, it was fun because you were trying to qualify for a 16-car field. Yeah. And you got some races where, there's 20-plus cars trying to qualify for that field. And
everybody's hundreds of a seconds apart.
Oh yeah, and it's just close, tight competition there,
and that makes it the most fun. And did you feel like an 1190 index is racing is not affordable? It's not. I mean, it's on average, but for the most part, that class was fairly affordable. Like the guys were fairly consistent running.
Yeah,
but
to me that class is, in a way, it's bracket, but it's not, because somebody's picking your time. If you run like Pro Eliminator, you're doing brackets, you could adjust your time based on conditions and everything else. You run these index classes, you don't have a choice. You still got to find a way to run that number depending upon the conditions, whether that's headwind, tailwind, heat, humidity, whatever it might be, track conditions, you name it. And so you have to kind of be married to your car,
right?
And know all and understand your car as well as your driving. You got to understand and feel it.
And for people that aren't big into drag racing, when you say like an 1190 index, the goal is to run 1190, 11.900,
not quicker than.
Right. So the battle is how close can you get without that. And so if all you guys are showing up, and is it consistency or the closest number that wins that class? It's the closest number that wins that class.
It's the closest number that wins the class.
Period.
Well, yeah. You just have to be. You still have to be better than the other guy. No. Reaction time and ET, and But a lot of these guys, you'd run into situations where I remember back. I think it was 2005. I don't remember exactly what year, but I remember going to the finals against Alan Weiss in Vegas. And I told Doug, I said, you're probably going to see a double breakout here.
Oh, both you guys are good, because both you guys are so close to 1190.
We both kind of want the stripe. We're right there. We can run the number. They all can run the number, and so that's the game, And so you got reaction time factoring in and stuff, and sure enough, we both broke out, but I broke out by less.
Yeah.
I was fortunate, and that's how close it is.
That's
and
insane.
all those guys, they're tough.
And a lot of those guys went on to run way faster classes. Well, at least Lawless did.
Yeah, Mike Lawless did, yep.
Yeah,
Turbo on it and stuff, and stepped it up.
And what's
interesting, car.
What's interesting with him is he was running that class, and his car, he was already outgunned in the beginning because his car was heavier than everybody else, right? I mean, driving that Ghia.
Oh, yeah.
That's a heavy car.
That was a heavy car.
And he showed up, and he was committed, like, I'm running this car, and I'm going to run with you guys. So he knew he had the...
I tell you, all those guys were tough.
Yeah.
You know, and you got some of the folks out of Colorado and stuff, Randy Bowen, Eric Matson, Randy Caldwell when you ran local there. Greg Decker came out of Texas. He was tough. He'd won a championship a year or so.
Yeah.
You know, it's tough.
And when you're running a car like that's tuned that well, how much work is it from when you're running at, where would you guys run at, Fontana, and then you would run in Vegas?
Well, a lot of the PRA was Phoenix,
Right.
Denver, 2 Sacks. A couple of years, I think we ran Seattle.
And then there was Vegas too.
There was a Vegas, yep, the old Vegas track, and then also the new one.
So the difference between running in Washington, Colorado, and Vegas and Phoenix is substantial. I mean, like, you're doing jet changes and all that stuff for elevation?
Yeah, yeah. And for like Denver, they would do a correction on the index. You know, so instead of 1190,
explain that to me.
Instead of
So
1190, you know, I can't remember. I think it was like 1230 or 1250. I honestly can't remember.
Because of how the elevation
because of
of the track.
altitude and the impact it has on the power out of your car. You know, it's like 20-25% loss.
And you
power-wise.
feel it when you're up there racing.
Oh, absolutely. You got a rhythm going when you're shifting. You get up to Denver and you got to pause yourself to shift. Oh yeah, it's that noticeable.
Because you got to
It's
really
tremendous.
wring its neck in Denver to get the same time?
You got to, well, not so much that, you just got to wait it out. It takes the car longer to get through the gear. You know, unless of course you change gearing, which we didn't do, but
yeah,
you know, you just got to wait it out, you know, but you lean it out, you can put some more timing in it, and you know, just.
Was everybody at that time, what were the limitations of 1190 index class? Like, it was displacement heads, or it was wide open, just natural?
No, I think
aspirated?
the only thing, you just couldn't run like a dragster, but you could come with whatever you want, a turbo, nitrous, it didn't matter.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that. I always thought 1190 index was like, it was
no.
naturally aspirated.
No.
Oh, wow.
Nope.
So you could do, so that would make it fun then. Like, if a guy's got a boosted car, that's a real sleeper move, because you leave him at the light and then he reels you at the back end of the eighth, or the back end of the quarter, because now most everything's running eighth mile, right?
Yeah, now. Yeah,
it's a different
sadly,
world.
but-
And running an eighth mile is a completely different world than a quarter mile, right? Because you could have a car that would destroy you. You could have a 10-second car get beat by an 11-second car in the eighth mile all day.
Yeah, but throughout the PRA years, I think everything there was quarter mile.
So
I don't remember any instance where we were eighth.
So what was your 1190 index setup? What was your motor, trans, carbs, cam? What was the setup, or is it secret?
Well, the same motor that I've been running for years.
The one that's in the car now?
No.
Okay.
78 by 94.
Okay.
FK89, Berg 1.4 rockers, and, you know, 48 IDAs and Clyde's welded heads.
And on a motor like that for 1190 index class, how many passes do you get out of that motor before you do a teardown?
Well, with my motor, because I had a VW journal, I was always pulling it down every couple of races to check rod bearings, because I was so hard on that motor.
And so when you say VW journal, that means you're using a VW connecting rod.
Yep.
And
well,
so,
actually, I'm using a Carrillo rod, but VW journal. Yep.
So VW journal means the diameter of the journal.
Yeah.
And then when you're going, like when they do to Chevy's the upgrade, a Chevy rod
Chevy
journal.
Buick, yeah.
Is it a smaller diameter, thicker rod end, or
it's a wider bearing too, I think.
Oh, is it? So they actually widen the surface, so you get a little
and
more.
And you can get a better quality bearing too.
Because that's kind of really the killer, right? Is the quality of the parts now, or what? I mean, we finally got where we have heavy duty aluminum cases, but now our bearings are trash, right?
Yeah.
So it's
trying to find a good set of main
I see guys like Johnny over here with his car, and it's all, super expensive crankshaft, super expensive engine case, and he runs he was telling me he runs the steel back Chevy bearings for rod bearings, stuff like that, because he's running an incredible amount of compression and a lot of boost, and he's getting a lot of passes because he's using nothing close to stock on the bottom end.
Yeah.
And that's the disappointing part, right? With how many Volkswagen engines are built these days, maybe it's the fact that we're squeezing so much power out of a rod bearing that was designed for 40 horsepower.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and my motor was small. My car was heavy. And
what displacement is that? 78 by 94 is 20?
Like 2017 or something like that.
Okay.
And I, just running the hell out of it. And in the early days, I didn't have like MSD ignition, and I had like the Stinger S4 set up in
Really?
it. So there's no rev limiter. And
so it's all you on the light.
In the early days, I had stainless valves in it, with Chevy K800 springs, and the rev limiter was my foot on the floor and however far the motor would go, and then I put tie valves in it, and the same thing, still no rev limiter at that time on the floor, and you can definitely tell a tone difference when you're leaving the line with the motor with the tie valves versus stainless.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it really wanted to sing. And then I finally eventually went and bought an MSD with two-step. And
that's a game, like a two-step is a game changer for drag
racing. It
racing.
helped control things, but if you look at it, I was beating the hell out of that motor,
And so you run that motor, that displacement for how long?
Oh, through the 90s, the 2000s, and early, 2010, 2011.
And all the teardowns.
Even actually, I ran it in the last Phoenix Buggerama here in April.
Really?
Yeah, because my new motor, the bigger motor, was too much to run the 1190 index.
So you ran that 2075?
2017. Yep.
2017, you ran that motor again, 1190 index down there?
Yep, in Phoenix.
Because they were running quarter mile.
Yes. Yep.
You prefer quarter mile over eighth?
Yeah. I mean, I'm getting more used to the eighth and comfortable, with it. But, I still kind of like the quarter mile.
Yeah. I mean, you figure, because really that's where all the hard work pays off at the top end of that quarter mile, right?
Yeah. I mean, the eighth makes it more challenging because you got less time to think.
Yeah.
And you got to make decisions at the stripe, a lot quicker.
Yeah, that's
engage things. It comes quick.
I mean, so for a guy like me, right? I'm coming out. This is my bucket of bolts drag car in a box. I bought it like you see it.
Right.
What's your advice to a guy that's going to go racing for the first time? Like, what if you're with the knowledge you have, looking back at what you did? What are the shortest moves to make to have a consistent good car?
I would do your homework and not just try to piecemeal it together and get out there in the track.
Yeah.
Cry once,
right,
so to speak, and kind of the Gene's philosophy.
Pay the
price once. And I learned that early on. And I always say, have a plan, stick within whatever you can budget and time, and go with the good quality.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't get it together right away, wait on it, and just get it together and spend your time, do your homework, and
as far as driving, what's been the biggest game changer in driving? Has it been the two steps have been the biggest game changer as far as like launching consistently?
Yeah,
for
me, yeah. I mean, my car probably could use clutch management. In fact, a lot of people probably tell me that. But
explain to me clutch management. What are you talking about when you're saying clutch management?
Well, my car right now only has a 3-puck in it with the big motor, a 2,500 pound Kennedy.
Oh wow!
In it, and it has no forgiveness.
So when it's
when
on,
I
it's
drop
on.
it locks. There's no slip into the clutch. Nothing. It's pretty violent.
Right.
And so it would be far better and more predictable in some cases if you were to have something that would give you a little bit of a slip.
And that's like something like what Loomis makes out of Rev
Loomis
6.
steel, or you can put like one of those anti-shockers on there, or something of that nature.
I mean, that Washington anti-shocker that Bergs sells, that actually makes a little bit of a difference.
Yeah.
That little tiny resistance at the very end.
Yep. Or just something, that would, release and control the release of the clutch pedal, delay it just a little bit, slow it down.
And your car still cable everything?
Yep.
Cable, clutch, all that stuff?
Yep.
So the two-step makes it more predictable for a launch anyway, right? You can focus more on just like floorboarding it, and then now, are you a soft clutch guy, or you just sidestep the clutch and pop it?
Sidestep it.
And that's now, how do you do your preload?
E-brake.
So you still do an e-brake preload?
Yep.
And so you roll up to light, you get both lights yellow, and you've got that e-brake, and you just
one light yellow, and I'm pulling up on the e-brake and dragging it in.
So that's your move. Like, you put a little bit of clutch engagement, and it pushes the car a little bit forward, and you just have that engaged like that, and then
with some e-brake.
I'm taking
pressure.
notes.
Yeah, with some e-brake pressure. Yeah. Well, and you want to kind of load that box too.
Yeah.
Of course, I have a bus box, so that helps. So
you like, in the history of all the racing, you really like the PRA, that particular season.
Oh, that era.
That era with the guys, because there was
Without a doubt.
a lot of guys out there racing. Have you seen, because I think the move with everybody is trying to figure out how they can get more people racing to make it more fun.
Mm-hmm.
Any ideas that you have that would make it more, get more people out there racing? Or sometimes, I mean, as much of a veteran as you are, it might be sometimes gets irritating when people show up not ready to race and they get everybody on the track and it becomes kind of a circus a little bit.
It's challenging.
Yeah.
I think, it really is challenging because you've got a bunch of different dynamics in play, right?
Right.
Having a card that stays together, always runs good. The money aspect, the travel, you just look at Southern California, what do we got left? Irwindale, right?
Yeah, and it's like, and it's
No
supposed
Fontana,
to be
no Terminal Island.
It's supposed to be the mecca of the VW world, and meanwhile you're down to one track.
Yeah.
And Irwindale's it, right? Anymore? I mean, Fontana.
You got Verona down south.
Yeah,
8 mile
Fontana's
track.
done, right?
Fontana's done for everything I know. It's done. And so
and
Vegas
Vegas is outrageously expensive
for any promoter for our industry to really invest in.
And I've even tried, because I do a show in Las Vegas, and I reached out to a buddy of mine who puts on a Hot Rod Association. I forget the name of his thing off the slips my mind off the top of my brain right now, but he does a show at the Strip, and I said, hey, what about, how could we get in here and bring a VW class and kind of do something like that? And he was just kind of like, no, I don't think we'd want to have the VWs come out, because we have a reputation in Vegas of oiling down the track. You know what I mean?
Well, same holds true in Famoso and Bakersfield.
Yeah. And so, and how's that gotten over the years with like the diapers and the catch things underneath the cars? Has that made a big difference?
Oh, yeah.
Keeping people from.
Yeah. I think some probably are like, but honestly, it does help.
Yeah.
And on these, you kind of need it.
Yeah.
The motor's behind you.
Yeah.
You can't always see what's going on.
There's always something going on.
Yeah.
What is your blue card the only VW that you have?
Yes.
And you don't have any street cars or any of that stuff. You just put it in the trailer, bring it out, take it to the track, run quarter, eighth, and you really like that's your sweet spot.
Yep.
That's what you like.
That's
right
about
there.
all I have time for, and I honestly really don't have time for that, but we make time.
So now you're up here at the Volks Group thing, which was formerly connected with Fast Four Cartel, and what these guys up here in this area, in this region, have been doing, because there's a lot of tracks up here up north.
Yep.
It's quite a distance away.
Yes.
I mean, we were 13 hours plus to get here because we had a couple stops.
Right.
But I mean, the weather's not bad. The tracks, I would assume this track, from what I can tell, would be fairly affordable to rent this track and kind of make things happen. Is that the main reason that they're doing it up here? Because a lot of the guys that are up here from Southern California, that like, and I want to. This is me talking from the standpoint of not really a racer guy,
right?
But it seems to me like the really committed race guys are here because they love to race. It's not about the bragging rights. It's not about, they love to race, and if there's a chance and a place to race, they're going to race.
Well, yes, and the added features and benefits of being in an event like this in Medford and or Redding or Samoa, the old cartel, is the experience, the Tom Kinney experience.
Oh,
here, and just the relaxed atmosphere, the ability to come in, set up, be able, and Jamie and I my wife, we were talking about this last night. I don't recall talking to so many people during an event as we have here just yesterday.
Yeah.
And so you get the ability to have, engage with people
and make friendships and
or even just, people that you've known that if you come in for a race for, one day, you come in, you set up, you race, you tear down, you leave,
Right.
You have no time to really socialize and spend time with people we consider family.
Yeah, I think that's a key component to this.
This brings that without a doubt. This is really, really nice because you got multiple days.
And I think that's probably something that's pretty important on it, because as I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking, when you're at a show, it's like, okay, everything is like from 8 to 3 and you're done and that's it. And it's over and go home. And it seems like, because the ones I have the most experience with obviously are the Vegas Bugaramas, and it's for me being a local in Vegas, it's like, oh man, it's all the way at the track. There's no shade out there.
Yeah.
It's hot. It's October and
Right.
the pavement's radiating heat.
Right.
And then you get out there and it's so far away. The show cars from the track is so far away. It's like, I mean, literally, you run to the races to watch races 3 and 4 times, and it's just like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh. And the bummer for me is we'd go there to watch it, and it's like, all right, cool, these guys are lined up. What happened? Oh, that guy oiled down the track. All right, well, we're going to wait
Right.
30
Right.
minutes. And it's so, the oil down the track has been a huge thing from my standpoint of looking at, like, how do you get where you can make it more enjoyable from a spectator standpoint as well, because you need the spectators as much as you need the racers.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. This is the second event I've never driven this far, gone this far for drag racing ever, because I'm not a racer.
It's tough.
It's a commitment, but it's like you said, it's such a cool experience up here. It's so laid back. I mean, even today, it's kind of the car shows going on today. Racing won't start until the afternoon. And usually when the racing's going on, it's just everybody's just intense, lined up, race, go.
Yep.
So I think I enjoy coming here. I wish it were a little bit closer.
I do too.
It's
But I understand why it's not.
yeah.
It's
And
the money.
yeah, 100%. And it's just, there's so much available land, and it's almost like you need racers to be buying land to put little drag strips together that this stuff can happen, because there used to be little drag strips peppered throughout the West Coast, and slowly but surely. And now my understanding is Sacramento is going to be.
Sacramento's going. Vandermeer, Colorado's going.
They had the last Phoenix Bug-A-Ram. I don't know if something happened with that track, or they're just not doing the race anymore.
Well, there are developments coming in, approaching. That's and that's really the story for most of these tracks that are leaving. The money's too good for the land and developers, and coming in and taking over, and yeah, I hear that the Vandermeers are actually looking for another location.
Oh, really?
Yep, I heard rumor Castle Rock. I don't know.
So they sold. So Vandermeer in Denver. That's the Denver track, right?
Yeah,
That's sold.
That's a beautiful track. Beautiful track.
And it's no longer.
After this year, it's gone.
Jeez Louise.
And it's sad, because it's really a beautiful track, and they are really great people that own and run that, the Vandermeers.
Yeah, but like you said, when you've been doing something 30, 40 years, and now it comes time to retire, and you're looking like, well, I can sell all this stuff. And
well, it's not that they're being pushed out. There's condos and townhomes and
then
stuff
people
that are
start
being
complaining
developed around there, from what I'm told. And and then you get the noise complaints and everything else. And it's just, it's frustrating.
Yeah, I wish I could get something. I wish I could get something going in Vegas. And that's why, Johnny, who here we're with, he does a lot of the cash days of the street racing and stuff like that. And he does it because he loves racing, and so he's out here doing, going to all these different races, doing all these different things, and this is his first time, at a track.
Yeah,
this is his first time
running off a tree. Yeah.
So
I saw that.
It's gonna be it's gonna be pretty interesting to see him run tonight. I know he's excited to be here, and I explained to him last time when I came to the last event when we were up in Eureka, and I said, it's just a real kind of cool laid back thing here with what Tom Kinney kind of puts together and all these guys. It's just a real fun. It's a fun experience, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, with your car, now you said you put a big motor in it. What's the big motor setup you have now?
It's an 8694.
Why did you make a big motor change?
Well, I've been wanting to go big motor for quite a few years. And, I just couldn't really afford to go and do all the parts and everything. And, I had a lot of help. I actually, if I back up a little bit, I sat out from racing for about 5-6 years while my kids were in high school and my son was doing 2 sports. I was on a couple of big projects at work, and it was more work to try to race than enjoyment by far. And so occasionally I'd go to a local race, and John Schuerger would always come up to me and say, hey, we need you back out here. What do you need? Let me know, And so finally, he and I got together, and with his help, I've been able to kind of gather some things for this big motor. And I had a short block together, covered in a bag, sitting in my garage for several years.
Really?
I didn't have the time to finish it. I just didn't have the time. And so finally, this last holidays, I usually take 2 weeks off for Christmas and New Year's. I spent the entire 2 weeks at the shop, 10 hours a day, every day, working on that motor.
Really?
Machining, fitting, putting together, taking apart, machining, fitting, putting together, taking apart, you name it.
Because to
put it together.
You come across as a pretty particular guy.
Yep, to make sure it's right as best we can the first time.
And
because there's so much money and so much time involved to come out to an event.
And
I don't want to sit here and just lay an egg or break something.
Right.
So, again, it's that doing it right the first time, making that sacrifice to do it right so that you get results that you would expect, or you would hope.
And the new motor is besides bore and stroke, what's different than the last motor?
Nothing.
So same case, same type of engine case?
I've got the aluminum case. Yep.
So the other motor,
Pat Downs helped me get that case.
Your first motor is a magnesium case?
Yeah.
Have you ever had line bore, or is it still standard?
No, it's standard.
So you've torn it down enough and kept an eye on it to where you haven't wobbled it out?
Yeah, no.
And how many passes do you think you have on your first motor?
God.
Hundreds?
More than that.
Really?
Yeah, quite. Yeah, I mean, you think about it, all of the years from the late 80s, 90s, 2000s.
And you've never... that's pretty lucky. You've never grenaded a flywheel, never done any catastrophic damage to that engine case.
No.
Wow.
No.
That's a testament to a good engine builder.
No, it's tough. It's tough.
I mean, you've got to be, and especially with that motor, because you're squeezing the daylights out of that thing, right? Because of the displacement to push it as hard as you are.
The worst that's happened to that motor is I've dropped valves.
And that's a head issue more than anything else.
Yeah, that's a valve issue. Yep. Broken at the keeper groove. And
Johnny loves that Harbor Freight jack. I say every time he looks at me, he's like, "Thanks for bringing the Harbor Freight jack, Bill." So,
quick advertisement there.
That's it. Harbor Freight. Go get yourself some jacks.
Yeah.
So
you walk away with the handle in your hand.
It's a two-piece. It's a two-piece jack.
Yeah. So other than that, that was the worst. So obviously, it hurt some pistons, cylinders, things like that. But the bottom end itself.
So new motor, you're running a K89 in the new motor too?
Yeah.
You just like that cam?
Yeah, I just ran a FK89 and the Berg 1.4 rockers.
What do you rev that motor to?
This one right now, I'll leave the line. Yeah, probably about 8,600.
8,600 RPM?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of RPM.
Not like my old motor.
What was your other motor leaving at?
With the tie valves and no limiter.
Yeah.
A little over 10 grand.
No way.
Yeah, it was 9-10 grand every time.
And you've
with that
never
motor.
blown the case out?
No.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So.
I mean, I wouldn't even think you could rev a mag case up to 10 grand, but I guess John Shuerger says you can.
Good crank in there and good rods.
Well, really, that's what it comes down to, right? I mean, if you've got the quality parts, they're going to be within where they need to be, so that they're not going to be not going to be blowing out and doing that stuff. I mean, I'm hugely impressed, and so now you've brought the RPM down. What different? You feel a substantial difference in the motor, like in the grunt, bottom end grunt?
Oh, with this big motor, without a doubt. Oh yeah, without a doubt.
How do you like it?
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's been what I'm waiting for years, knowing that I needed to put a bigger motor in, because with the small motor, I could download the graphs, the RPM graphs, and I'd go from that, high 9,000 RPM launch and watch that thing just drop like a rock, and actually pulled it off the cam. It dropped to like 4,500. So, I was losing power right off the line immediately because I was off the cam.
And so now with the new motor, so what RPM you drop into when because you're leaving at a lower RPM of 8,900.
Yeah. Now I actually play with it a little bit, so I can vary a few hundred RPM here or there depending upon track conditions and so forth. So, it's probably around 7,500.
Oh wow! So you're right in the power band and it just goes.
Yeah.
What do you think the big motor would run quarter mile?
Well, we still are fine-tuning it, but I ran a 715 at Irwindale at 94 miles an hour.
What should a 715, if you're keeping the trajectory?
It should run low 1130s, low mid 1130s in the quarter.
Wow.
And with the weight of the car, it probably calculates out around 250 horse, somewhere around there.
And with the new displacement, the aluminum case, all that stuff, does it how long do you think you'll go extended times without having to tear it down?
Oh yeah, that's the whole plan of the big motor as well, because now I can use the Chevy bearing, the good Cleveite coated triple back bearing, and
you were around back in the day when they were doing the SPG cranks, right?
I don't recall much
but
of that.
You
stuff.
never did any SPG cranks.
No.
Yeah, because I understood those were all the rage, and from a philosophy of like looking at a solid rod with no bolts holding it together, that would seem like a better deal. But they had their flaws in them as well. So,
from a rod standpoint, I always just stick and put Carrillos in.
And
bite the bullet.
What heads are you running on the new motor?
Well, taking a step back there too. When I was out for those few years and needed parts, the heads that were on my small motor had been welded on so many times. Clyde had done a masterful job keeping those things,
And those were
together.
stock cast heads.
Stock cast
big
heads.
Valves.
They were originally welded, big valves. But, it got to a point, in fly cut a number of times and stuff, and you'd weld up in the chambers and stuff. These things were, getting kind of soft. And there was one point in time where the heads were so soft that I was pulling the rocker block out of the head.
Oh, wow.
And so Clyde took and welded the rocker blocks back in, but then he went an extra step and took a 1/2-inch aluminum plate and basically set it inside the rocker area, valve area, and then recut pockets for the valve springs and cut out, and set it down and welded around the rocker blocks. So the heads are now almost twice the weight of a regular VW head.
Holy cow.
So anyway, I had those, and Mike Lawless, he was going to get another set of heads. He had these comp eliminators, and he was going to get another set of heads, and he had these bare ones just laying around.
Yeah.
And so he offered them to me. And so I said, sure, I'll take them. They had some minor little cracks in the intake seat area, but nothing big for me.
Right.
I didn't really, care. And so I did those and just loaded it up with hardware, and that's what I had on my small motor, and that's what I moved over to my big motor, and I put my old heads back on my small motor. So now I have two complete motors.
So the heads of the new motor are the comp eliminator heads.
Yeah, with some big valves, bigger than I need on this. Really.
So what valve size?
4840s, I think.
4840s?
Yeah, I think they're 4840s, if I recall right.
Jeez.
They're huge. They're way too big for what I need.
Yeah,
Right, but he had a turbo, so
get it in there, right? Wow, that's quite massive. And then you notice a bigger difference with performance. I mean, your motor, you're running no shroud and that stuff. You're running just the squirrel cage, all that stuff. Are you noticing any temp differences going with the bigger motor? Is it running cooler at all? It's the same.
Not really any different. No.
So everything's pretty much staying
Not
the same.
that I've noticed. No. Yeah.
That's awesome. And then as far as transaxles, you've had that car for a long time. You had that car with the Berg 5-speed in it.
I originally, for quite a few years, had the Type 1 box, and then, me being me and making sure I'm prepared, and when I go to a race, I'd be swapping ring and pinions every race or two, just to make sure they were healthy.
And you were swapping your ring and pinions?
Yeah, I'd do them all.
Good grief. You do everything.
Yeah, it was nuts. I don't know how I did it back then, but, and I had my eye on, the Volks kit, the axle kit, and a bus box. But it was one of those situations where I really couldn't afford it. Well, I finally got to a point where, sold Type 1 stuff, sold the axles, and bit the bullet, put a bus box in it with the Volks kit. And I tell you, out of sight, out of mind.
Really?
It's such a peaceful feeling. When you're up the starting line, you don't have to freaking worry about it. It's amazing.
So now the only real issues you're going to have now are going to be clutch. You'll have more clutch issues than you will have trans issues.
Yeah,
if you're going to have issues.
Yeah, it's
so
it's
you
rock
just
solid.
You just move the weak point out of the transaxle now. So that's one thing you have to worry about less.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be the way that everybody goes in the drag racing circuit, right? When I talked to Scott Kelly in my podcast, and he says, when he switched a bus box, he was now counting seasons instead of races.
Absolutely. I mean, the box that's in my car right now, the 4-speed box that's in my car right now, is the one that I ran back in the PRA days.
Really?
Yeah, same ring and pinion. It's the original ring and pinion.
Wow. And that's bus box that's in there now.
Yep.
So it's the bus box with the U-joint conversion?
Yep.
And
Dave
that
Foltz,
you still run swing axle trailing arms?
Yes.
So it's essentially IRS, because it's the same way that my Corvair is. My Corvair has dual U-joints in it. on a with a short drive shaft between the two. Is that
Oh,
the
not
same?
dual. No, it's just got the U-joints right at the tranny,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's all swing axle from there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it's not
Yeah,
a dual
It's
U-joint.
not a dual.
It's just got a
No.
U-joint going there.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
And those have been proven pretty reliable, huh?
Yeah, they're the original ones
Wow.
too.
And what's if a guy wants to build a trans like that, what's a trans like that going to cost somebody? $6,000?
I don't know nowadays.
You build
To be
them all.
honest. Yeah.
You've been doing them yourself.
I just do them myself. You know,
Must
because
be nice.
you know it's for me. You know, knowing for me, because if I know how to do it myself, if I'm at the track and I have some issues, I know what to do.
Right.
You know, obviously I may not have the equipment or machining or whatever I need at the track, but at least I know what's going on, and I can, you know.
Yeah. With now having your car kind of dialed in, running this with this group here, how have you been consistency-wise running in this group? Have you won any of these?
Oh, yeah.
How many of these races have you won?
3. Yeah, I want to say 3.
And you run in a triple index class, or you?
Yeah, it was triple index back then. Yeah,
And-
now
and-
it's super index here starting this year.
And so your dial in here is what?
Probably 730s.
So 730s, and then this event pays pretty good.
Yeah.
As far as, which is also huge for
Yeah.
racers as well, because you put all that time, effort, energy to it, and to
Yeah.
walk away with
and
100.
travel for some of us.
Yeah, that's a distance to go, but I think it's
Yeah.
another one of the reasons that makes it so fun, because there's really a worthwhile. I mean, there's
Oh yeah,
a
there's
worthwhile.
a pot of gold potential at the end, so to speak. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it helps without
So-
a doubt.
How long you think you'll be racing for?
You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. As long as my body is able,
Yeah.
I think. You know, my wife and I talk about that quite a bit in the last couple of years. You know, especially when I was hawing around about buying an enclosed trailer, and I'm like, oh man, you know, it's just a lot of money. You know, I don't want to do that. You know, but then, you know, I worry about the car and stuff and traveling to long events, and so she says, hey, you know, you only live once. Let's just do it. You know, she says, you want me to make the phone call? How can you argue with that, right?
You can't.
You know, so
God bless her.
yeah. So as long as her and I and, you know, the family are good and we still enjoy it, and
That's-
you know, being around family like this is, you know,
Yeah,
it's awesome.
and it's pretty
so-
much a year-round thing almost. I mean, with the
Yeah.
with the races, you know, there's
Yeah.
they start in January, and they have me here. We are in June.
Yeah.
right?
I mean, for me, it's really from March to October.
Yeah,
You know, this year is going to be quite a few events I'm trying,
yeah.
different ones.
And there's really nobody else doing. I mean, they're trying to do a little real street stuff down there, but you
Mhm.
don't run real street class. It's not.
No.
That's not your thing. And then the ones that you run, like, so the ones for us novice guys that aren't really into it, when at Bug-O-Rama, or not Bug-O-Rama, but Bug-In, what are they running? It's just their own.
I'm running Pro Eliminator.
So
in
you
that
run Pro
class,
Eliminator
you
over
know,
there.
they've got the trophies, trophy class, Pro Eliminator, Real Street, Outlaw Turbo, I think. You know, but you know, for me, I just run Pro Eliminator.
And Pro Limiter, that's an index class.
Nope, bracket.
That's
Just pure
bracket.
bracket. Yeah.
Okay, so with you being pretty consistent, you're a hard guy to beat over there. You're the guy everybody wants to take
I
out.
don't know about that, but
You're the guy like, oh,
You know.
he showed up. Here's Mr. Consistent. Ah, dang it. Well, that's awesome. I love the fact that, you know, like your thing is drag racing. Like that's your thing. You come
Yeah.
here, you drag race. You're not a full blown pro turbo car. You're a consistent.
it's my release.
Yeah, and I think it's awesome. I mean, it's you know, you were running a Berg 5-speed for a while. I mean,
Oh, for a long time.
For quite a few
And I
years.
might put it back in too, even though we might be 8th mile on most tracks. You know, we'll probably put it back in.
when you're running 1190 index, did you have because you don't have a fan shroud on there now? Were you running a fan shroud 1190
No,
index?
no.
So you've always been like a free up that little bit of horsepower and just
Oh yeah,
cool
yeah,
the car
yeah.
down.
Yeah, well, I need that in some, you know, for some tracks like Phoenix, you know, and that small motor that I was running, you know, it presented a challenge at times in certain conditions to be able to run 1190.
Yeah.
So even at the last,
Well, yeah.
event-
If you're leaving at 10,000 RPM, I don't know how your fan's going to hold up.
yeah, no, no, a regular cooling fan.
Yeah, that's not staying together, man. Well,
Yeah.
Who's been? If you want to give some thanks to some people that have been in your corner this whole time? Who are some people you'd like to thank?
Without a doubt, all the team at Gene Berg Enterprises, and Doug Berg. I learned so much from Gary in the Super Street days, kind of helping him for a couple of years and hanging around the shop and just really understanding what it takes to run a heads-up class.
Yeah.
Obviously, Gene, D, the whole team there at Gene Bergs.
And you spent a bunch of time with Gene. I mean, back in the day, did you spend a fair amount of time with him?
A fair amount. Sure.
And you're there on off hours type thing, like were they?
At times, yeah.
So they, like, you had a relationship with them where they'd give you a hand and you doing some of the stuff. They'd help you kind of get stuff tuned and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, geez, some of the nights there, we'd be out there with Gary and he'd be on the dyno, motor on the dyno, and Gene would be back there, and it'd be late nights.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't feel like a late night because that man could really keep you entertained. He would be cracking jokes and having you on the floor all night long.
Really?
I really miss those days, really, really something.
Yeah, that's that's one of those things where unfortunately he left a little too soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
The only interaction I ever had with Gene Berg is I was selling a set of DCNFs at Pomona Swap Meet, and he was buying them from me. And I was like, I just sold Gene Berg some carburetors. that was my claim to fame. So it was, I have a motor in one of my cars that's a Berg motor. All the receipts came from Gene Berg. And it was in a thing that I bought. The guy says, yeah, it's a brand new engine. I'm like, how big is it? 1,800 cc's. I paid like $2,000 for it. I'm thinking, what? 1,800 cc you're getting for $2,000. Well, he gives me all the receipts for all the engine parts in 1988 that were $2,000. Which was a lot more than it is today in 1988.
Yep.
And I was shocked to find out this motor that I picked up, and it was everything Berg. The gold pulley, the Berg linkage, the heads are stamped, ported by Clyde Berg, everything. And I'm trying to get other people to love these DCNFs with me, but people are wanting to fight me on the DCNFs. What you on the street, did you like DCNFs on the street as a carburetor?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, nothing replaces a 48 for all out, just feeling power.
And the sound.
Right. But the DCNF gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great carb. I know Berg loved him enough to buy him from me when he saw him on my, when I had him in my deal.
Yeah. The specials.
Yeah. So, and I actually have 2 sets of specials now with all that stuff. And so I'm, it's in one of my 80s cars, and I'm excited to I like driving it. I got an old school glass pack on there, and it's real raspy and loud, but it's a fun car to drive.
Yeah.
But
yeah, thanking them, really, and Doug over the recent years. My God, the commitment that he's had to me and my family in this racing program is just.
Yeah, Doug and D, I see them every time. Every time I do one of these events way up north, there they are.
It's just unreal what he has done for me, and I can't thank him enough as well. And Clyde for all the years working on the cylinder heads, John Schuerger's helping me get back out here. Really, and of course my wife and family. If they weren't in on this and they weren't enjoying this, I wasn't going to do it. Yeah, and. That's one of the things throughout the years. We've met a lot of nice people traveling the PRA circuit, families and stuff.
Yeah.
It's been really great. Really.
Any of your kids are into the racing with you?
My stepson, he's got a GTI that he runs when we're down in Irwindale and stuff, and he actually brought it up here. He ran his Passat, I think, up in Samoa. But he's into it.
What, has he ever driven the blue car?
No. He's got a 65 in his garage.
Oh, yeah?
That we're working on. We've got some motor parts in the garage and stuff that we'll be working on at some point in time. But he's got family and other commitments.
Yeah.
And so it's been tough.
It's always a balance, but it's so fun when you can kind of pass that on to family. Yeah. And I mean, my sons are car guys, and they. And if I could snag them and bring them with me, they'd be with me today, Yeah. But I think it's just such a fun hobby that you can extend to your extended family, and if they get enjoyment out of it, even better. Because sometimes we start in this wacky hobby just because there's something weird about this car that we like, and it's this.
Yep.
It's this
Yeah.
goofy underdog car that everybody likes. And
It's a sleeper.
It's like the victory story, right?
Yeah.
Everybody likes to like, yeah, don't second guess the bug because the bug will surprise you.
Oh yeah. Look what Anthony Hearns did with the stuff down in Irwindale.
Yeah. No,
he's making us proud, man.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Now, did you ever get any involvement in the import drag racing back in those days? Or were you not there when NHRA was doing the import drags?
Well, I went to one event, and boy, that wasn't very very good. I think we got one round in.
Oh, really?
And just delay after delay. And this was at Pomona, and we just packed it up.
Yeah.
We were done. I did another import race that Jerry Spurn put on at Whitman one year.
Yeah.
Boy, was that a challenge too, because Whitman, they had the motocross track there.
Yeah.
And the wind was coming up, and so it blew all
Dusting
over the track,
everybody out,
and you just see the track was just all brown and gray, and the wind and everything. So they cut it down to 8th mile, and ended up going in the final against a Honda, and it was. I probably shouldn't have ran what I did. Doug came back and said, "I've never seen a car show both of his doors from straight behind as I did on that."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
A little loose on the track.
And you could see the tracks, because of all the dirt stuff. It was kind of stupid what I did, but ended up winning.
Sometimes you can't temper the passion to do it. So
yeah.
Well, John, I definitely appreciate you sitting down. I'm glad we got to chat
Thank you.
and kind of get your story and your history of what you've been doing, because you're one of the staples that's out here all the time, just consistently out here, showing up and making people work hard to try to be
and helping too.
consistent.
Whenever anybody needs something, we try to help and do the best we can.
I appreciate the tie wire that you loaned me for my
you got it
over here. So
you got it. We've done everything from welding to gaskets to you name it.
That's it.
So that's good.
Well,
Thank
hey,
you.
great having you on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
If you like that podcast, and I'm sure you did, make sure you share it with all your friends. Click on whatever app that you're listening to and share it with all your VW buddies. We love when our listeners help grow the podcast. Also, don't forget October 6th and 7th. Go to letstalkdubs.com right now. Register, get your room situated, because they will sell out. It's off to a great start. Got tons of pre-registration for this event this year, and you don't want to miss it. Starts off Friday night with the Ultimate Strip Cruise. Saturday morning with the car show with the top 20 in the best of show. The world famous poker run that happens Saturday night. So you don't want to miss that. Get your chance to win $1,500 in cash, or $300 or $200. But I'm giving away $2,000 in cash, and we might find out a way to give away some more cash. So that I'm looking forward to. Make sure you go to letstalkdubs.com and register today. Also, if you want to support the podcast, go to letstalkdubs.com and click on the merch tab. Go to the store, pick up some merch, support your boy for bringing you some of the best VW content available today. I hope you guys like what you learned about John Shuerger. Other than that, I'm excited. I'll get this car pieced back together. I'll make it home. Things will be okay. Don't worry about me. You guys enjoy the rest of your Friday. And until next week, later.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen.